Hi, boys and girls. This is Miss Reininger. Today in art, we are going to talk about shapes. Now, what a shape is where you take a line and draw it continuously until it has no end. So we talked about lines last week. So we're going to practice drawing lines again in order to make shapes. So I'm going to draw curved lines continuously until it never ends. So I've drawn this blob here on this scrap piece of paper. And I've drawn curved lines continuously until it didn't end, and that makes a shape on the inside. Now, there are two kinds of shapes. We have geometric shapes and organic shapes. So I'm going to present my screen with you. So just give me a second here. Okay, now on your screen, you can see two different kinds of shapes. In one column, it says geometric, and in the other column, it says organic. Now, what geometric shapes are they are shapes that are man-made. You tend to see them in math class, and they tend to be more rigid. So shapes like squares and circles and hexagons. So in that column with geometric shapes, that third shape with 6 sides, that's called a hexagon. So shapes with 6 sides are called hexagons. Triangles, rectangles, ovals, pentagons. Pentagons are those shapes that have 5 sides, and it kind of looks like a house to me. That's called a pentagon. Those are all geometric shapes. Can you think of any other geometric shapes? Okay. So some other geometric shapes include things and stars and octagons. Octagons have 8 sides. So there are lots of geometric shapes. On the other hand, we have organic shapes, and organic shapes come from nature. So when you see organic shapes, they tend to be more free-flowing. They tend to be less rigid. So in that other column, you see shapes that kind of look like blobs or clouds. Those are organic shapes. Also, if I were to take something from nature and trace the outline of it, that could also make an organic shape. So if I were to trace an animal like a bunny rabbit, that comes from nature. So if I were to trace the outline, that would be an organic shape. Or if I were to trace like a tree, plants come from nature. So the outline of a tree would be an organic shape. If I traced myself, my outline, that would be an organic shape because people come from the animal kingdom, therefore we come from nature. So we are, or if we trace our outline, that's an organic shape as well, okay? Now, artists use shapes a lot in their artwork. So I want to introduce you to Henri Matisse, who was a French artist who used lots of different shapes in his art. In particular, you're going to see lots of geometric and organic shapes in his cutout works of art, okay? So I'm going to share that video with you. Okay.
Hi friends, we're gonna do some collage.
Today we will learn about the artist Henri Matisse. Matisse was born in a small town in northern France in 1869. When he finished school, he moved to Paris to study law and become a court administrator. However, he tried out painting while he was healing from an illness and quickly decided that he wanted to be an artist instead of a lawyer. Matisse is known for colorful, vibrant paintings and sculptures. At the beginning of the 1900s, he was classified as a fauve artist. Fauve means wild beast in French, and Matisse's paintings definitely seemed wild, explosive, and unconventional to many who saw his work at the time. Matisse mingled with many famous artists and writers in Paris, including Pablo Picasso and Gertrude Stein, and eventually moved to the French town of Nice to continue his work.
Paper cutout!
After battling stomach cancer at the age of 72, Matisse was confined to a wheelchair. This made it difficult to paint and create sculptures, but Matisse was not ready to give up the work that he loved. So he created a new form of art, paper cutouts. He turned scissors into an artistic tool. Matisse would cut pre-painted paper into various shapes and sizes and then arrange and glue them on other pieces of paper, sometimes mural-sized paper that was as big as a wall. He would have a helper pin the cutouts on the wall and move them around until they were just right. His paper collages were cheerful and unique, with whimsical shapes and vibrant colors. Matisse was one of the first artists to use paper collages as an art form, and you can see his influence in some very popular children's books today.
Okay, so as you can see, Henri Matisse used shapes a lot. He used a lot of geometric and organic shapes, particularly in his cutout collages. So what a collage is where you cut out pieces of paper and arrange them and glue them in new ways. So today for our art project, we are going to create a collage in the style of Henri Matisse using shapes. So as you can see in this collage that I've created, I've got geometric shapes. So I have these rectangles and squares. I have triangles. I also have organic shapes. So kind of this squiggly shape, this free-flowing shape, these spirals, kind of this blob shape here. Those are organic shapes. So to start our project, we want to first gather our materials. So I'm going to adjust my camera here. So our materials that we're going to use today are paper. So you could have white paper, you could have colorful construction paper. I have a lot of scrap paper that kids didn't need anymore in art class, so that's what I'm using. Now, if you only have white paper and you want to make it colorful, you can either color on the paper with crayons or markers. If you have permission, you can paint the paper. That would be okay. In fact, if you've ever read the book A Very Hungry Caterpillar by Eric Carle or any other Eric Carle story, what he does is he paints paper and cuts it out to create his collages in the storybooks. Okay, so I've got my background paper, so yours could be white or a different color. And then I have lots of different scraps of paper here. So I've got scraps in all different colors. So gather a bunch of paper. And then I also have scissors, glue. I have a glue stick. You could also use the liquid squeeze glue. And I have a marker. You can use a pencil, you can use a crayon, whatever you have to mark with, okay? Now, I'm going to start by creating big shapes first, then medium-sized shapes, then small shapes. So I'm going to start with this pretty fuchsia paper here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut out a nice big rectangle. If you would like, you can draw it out first and then cut it if that helps you to stay on the lines, okay? Otherwise, if you feel more confident and you want to just start cutting, hey, go for it. So I'm going to do another rectangle with this turquoise color here. So turquoise is kind of like a bluish green. And then I'm going to use some yellow paper. And this is already a rectangle, so I'm just going to leave it as is. I'm not even going to cut it. Next, I'm going to get another piece of paper. And here's where I'm going to use my marker. I'm going to start doing some organic shapes. So these were easy because they were geometric and I didn't have to do much as far as cutting. For my organic shapes, they're going to be a little bit more complicated. So I'm going to do kind of a blob here on this red paper. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut it out, and I'm going to very carefully go slow and stay on the line and turn my page as I'm cutting it. See how I'm turning it with the hand that I'm not cutting with? That makes it much easier than cutting every which way like this and hurting your wrist. So you're going to see me turning a lot. So really take your time with this. Now, if you want to, you can create right along with me, or you can make it after this video. Or if you are creating it right now and you need some extra time cutting your shapes, you can always pause it, cut out a shape, and come back to the video. So whatever works for you. Okay. And you can see I have kind of this organic freeform blob shape right here. Now I'd like to do a couple more shapes. I'd like to use maybe this orange right here. So I have this strip of orange, and I think I'm just going to do kind of a curvy, wavy shape. So I'm just going to do like a wavy line. Remember, we practiced wavy lines last week. And I'm going to follow it along to make it a shape. So I'm kind of bubbling it out. Okay, so you can see it. Kind of looks like a snake. I'm going to take my time and go slow and turn my page as I go in order to cut it out. I even like to keep the scraps that I cut off in case I'd like to use them for my collage later. Okay, so I have kind of this wiggly shape here, this wiggly organic shape. Next, I think I want to do a spiral. So what color should I use for the spiral? Maybe I will use this gray color here. I have a lot of this color scrap. So to make a spiral, this can be a bit challenging. What I do is I start by making a normal spiral. I want to make it big. So I start by putting my marker on the paper, and I go slow and very carefully and slowly curl around and around. See how I'm very slowly and carefully curling it around? Now don't go too fast because you risk turning it into a scribble. Take your time. And see how I'm kind of spacing it out? Okay, now to make this line into a shape, I start on one side and follow it along. And I'm following along on the inside now. And I'm going to stop when I get to the end. Okay, so now you can see it. Now I'm going to cut it out. Now this can be a little challenging, so if you want to do a spiral, it might take you a few tries. Don't give up just because you don't get it right the first time. Remember, practice makes progress. I say that a lot. So every time you practice, you get a little bit better. I'm going to follow it along the inside now. This one can be a bit tricky, so really go slow. You don't have to do a spiral if you don't want to, but I figured I'd show you how to do it since some of you might be interested. Okay, now I'm to that point right there in the center. So I'm going to turn my page and follow it right back along. the outer edge. Okay, now I can pull it apart. And as you can see, it created 2 spirals. How cool is that? All right, now I'm going to cut some tiny shapes, and then I'm going to arrange all of my shapes on this paper to see how I want it to look before I glue it down. Okay, so I'm going to use this colorful painted paper here. It's kind of a scrap. I'm just going to cut tiny shapes. I'm not going to draw them out or anything. I'm just kind of cutting itty bitty shapes as I choose. They're taking on more of a geometric form because I'm seeing a lot of triangles. All right, I think that's good. Now, what I want to do is I want to start arranging it so I can kind of visualize and see what it's going to look like before I glue it down. So I'm going to start with the big pieces first. And the reason for that is because if I put a bunch of tiny pieces down, and I put big pieces over the top, you're not going to see those small pieces anymore. So I start with my biggest pieces first, and then I gradually get smaller and smaller. Okay, so I'm going to start with these great big rectangles, and maybe I'll do something like this. It's okay if they're on top of each other a bit. If they're over, that's called overlapping. That's okay. Maybe I'll have something like that. And then maybe I will have my spirals in opposite corners to kind of balance each other out. I think I'm going to do this side. It has a little bit of paint on it. I kind of like that. Maybe I'll do this red freeform organic shape. Maybe I'll do that somewhere in the center. Where did my squiggle go? I had a squiggle. I don't know where it went. Oh, there it is. Maybe I'll put it down here to balance this bigger shape out. And then I can just kind of put these small shapes all over the place. Now, I don't want to put a whole bunch of small shapes over here and then none over here. That would be very unbalanced looking. So I want to space them out throughout my page. And maybe I'll do something like that. Okay. So now I'm going to take these off. I'm going to kind of remember how that looked. And I'm going to start gluing. So I remember that I had these big shapes in the background first. I believe this was here. This yellow was down here and blue was on the right-hand side for me. So what I like to do when I glue is I like to glue the outside first. I kind of outline it. That way the edges don't pop up so easily. And then I put some glue on the inside. Okay. And I'm going to do this yellow. And then finally this turquoise color. Okay, and there's my background. So you can see the big shapes are on the background. Okay, next I'm going to do my medium-sized shapes. So like my spirals and the freeforms. So these are more organic shaped. The rectangles are more geometric shaped. And if I remember correctly, I had a spiral over here, and then I had a spiral over here. Okay, so they kind of balance each other out. And then I had this red freeform closer to the top center. And it might not be exactly how I laid it out, but it's similar. Then I'm going to do this orange kind of squiggly freeform shape across the bottom to balance out that red squiggle up there. And then I'm going to finally, excuse me, I'm going to finally put these little bitty pieces over the top and I'm going to space them out. Move that so it's not distracting. Need some over here. Could probably use one in the corner there. And maybe one right there. And then I think I'm going to be finished. Okay, I think I'm finished. I like the way this looks. So here is my collage in the style of artist Henri Matisse. And as you can see, I used geometric and organic shapes. Remember, a shape is where you take a line and draw it continuously until it never ends. I will see you guys next week. Have fun creating. Bye-bye.